Hour. He is John Doyle, former delegate. And were you ever a senator, John?
No.
Okay. Yeah, you ran for Senate.
I ran once for Senate.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And since we're talking about baseball, I watched the Nationals for about 3 innings yesterday and gave up, because it was terrible. And I'm glad I gave up because it got even worse after I left.
19-5.
Yeah, 19. Yeah, something 19-4, I think it was. But whatever it was. At any rate, about these things about pitchers leaving after 100 pitches. The Bob Feller and Warren Spahn don't exist anymore because Bob Feller was called Rapid Robert because he threw about 92 or 93 miles an hour. And now they want these guys to throw 95, 96, 97, 98. And that's the reason they can't go more than 100 pitches in a day.
Don't pound the table, Senator.
and last the whole season.
It's true, because, it used to just be the relief pitchers, the guys that come in for an inning or two who were the ones throwing 100 miles an hour.
Right, yeah.
I miss the days of Greg Maddux.
Oh, yeah.
Smoltz.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back a little farther. I mean, how many complete games did the Orioles have when it was McNally, Cuellar, Palmer, and Pat Dobson, the last 4 to win 20 games?
1971, and my Pirates beat them in the World Series, baby.
The Pirates. And now, when you call the Pirates and say, what time does the game start? They say, I don't know. What time can you be here?
Yeah. We got a lot of seats. We're saving for you. But, you bring that up, just a little note to attendance. It was this date, 2015, that the Orioles set the record for the lowest attendance ever for a Major League Baseball game of 0 because of the riots in Baltimore in 2015.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it was this day.
So you're not counting the COVID when they didn't let anybody in to the stadiums.
Yeah, it was to that point. Obviously, COVID changed that.
Yeah.
But even with COVID, the family members of the players were allowed in.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
I don't know if they paid or not, but they were allowed in.
Yeah.
So
as grubby as these owners are, they probably made them pay.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I remember listening to that game on the radio and just the weirdness of, no ambiance whatsoever in this empty stadium and everything echoing.
Yeah.
The Orioles have a new thing going on. I don't know how many years they've been doing it, but if you go and you buy the foo-foo food, the street tacos and all the stupid stuff that shouldn't be sold at a ballpark, you pay a lot of money. But they've got these stands. I can't remember what they're called, but I paid $4 for hot dogs. I paid $2 for a bottle of. I mean, it was normally priced.
1970s pricing.
I paid $29 to feed us both, and usually at a game that's like $70, $80.
Yeah, that's a lot usually. Hey, the Commanders yesterday announced that they would be returning. At least they're taking a step in that process. It has to be approved by the D.C. Council into the old RFK site to build a dome stadium that seats 65,000 people. We were having a little discussion about that before we went on the air here today. So your thoughts on that, Mr. Doyle, and whether or not the D.C. Council should vote to approve that?
Well, that's up to them. I don't know. I was a Redskins fan for a long time. I stopped rooting for them when they left town because I agree with Muriel Bowser. If a team has the name Washington, it should play in Washington. Just like I think neither the New York Jets or the New York Giants should have the name New York because they play in Jersey. It's okay for the Minnesota Vikings and the Minnesota Twins. They can play any place in the state of Minnesota if they want because they don't say Minneapolis or St. Paul. I'm really particular about stuff like this. So I do think if they're going to be the Washington Commanders, they should play in D.C.
I'm going to agree with you. I mean, I think they should. FedEx Field or whatever they call it now is
it's now Northwest Stadium, and I go northwest of what?
I tell you, there is a church right around the corner from there, a mega church, okay? And their pastor must be the smartest guy around because on game days, he moves the service to he must move it to 6 a.m. because they're a mega church. They have 1,000+ parking spots. They get $50 a spot at each game. I mean, can you imagine that? Matt, if you had a parking lot, think about what you could do with FCA.
It's incredible what we'll pay to park at places. When did owners go, you know what, they got a park, let's start charging for that too?
And that's an interesting point about the new stadium that they're going to build in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding that the old Jack Kent Cooke Stadium or whatever it was, FedEx Field, whatever, there were about 20,000. There are about 20,000 parking places there, even over and above that church. There are only going to be 8,000 parking places at the new RFK, or whatever they're going to call it.
But it's on a subway line.
That's right. They're going to anticipate that people will take a mass transit in, and many will. But if you're driving in from outside, what you're going to end up, you're going to be looking for places to park a mile or so away from the stadium and take mass transit from there in. So now I think some parking garage people in D.C. are going to start making some money.
I remember going up to a Memorial Stadium when I was young, and every other house had their yard for sale.
Yeah.
$20, we'll fit your car in.
65,000 does not sound like that big a stadium, though. I mean, you think of the Redskins and the waiting list that they had at one point in time. I mean, our own Rick and Greg Wachtel here were on that list forever and didn't get tickets until they moved into the current stadium that they're in now.
Same here.
But they built the current stadium originally to hold 80,000, and they realized it was too many. So they took about 10,000 seats out of there, went up and dismantled the upper tiers, so it only holds about 70,000 and still doesn't fill. It's interesting about the big-time stadiums now.
Well, but also because they were bad for 30 years, too.
Right.
Well, that's
and
true.
it was a horrible place to get to.
Yeah, I was going to say, hard to get to. I think you go back to where you were, where it's easier for people to get to. As you said, the mass transit, they're going to start selling out again quickly, especially if they play well.
Well, I maybe. There's a new theory about stadiums.
Not conceding that.
No, there's a new theory about stadiums now. It hasn't caught on yet, but it's starting to, that you make them smaller and you make the seats really, really expensive. And that way, the people who would pay for the cheap seats just don't come. They watch it on television or stream or whatever. Northwestern University, which is played in a place that was originally called Dyke Stadium. They remodeled it and changed the name. Holds about 48,000, 48.5, I think. They're tearing it down and they're building a brand new stadium to hold 35,000. That's all. But 20,000 of those seats are going to be premium. They're going to be like skyboxes and suites and stuff like that. And they figure they're going to make more money that way than they would with a 50,000-seat stadium with a normal distribution of seats.
Well, and those people probably also will spend more in the stadium on food and beer
That's
and
correct.
everything else. Yeah,
That's
that
correct.
makes sense, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. You price out the little guy. What happened to,
They don't care about the little guy.
So at some point, the little guy has got to stop caring about the team, and then things will start to change.
Yeah,
But,
and you might be right. You might be right.
If fans ever found a way to create their own union, we'd finally get somewhere,
And
right?
well, hey, there's a water buffalo flying by.
I just watched, I guess about 2 weeks ago, the ESPN 30 for 30 on the replacements, specifically really focused a lot on the Washington team because they won the Super Bowl that year and the way
Right.
Bobby Beathard and Charlie Casserly assembled talent for that. And that was you mentioned like the fans forming a union. It was very fascinating to watch the evolution of the fans' approach toward the replacement players. In the beginning, the fans were booing them and calling them scabs and whatever. And when Washington's replacement players started winning, they captured the heart of the city, and the fans started bringing signs that said, "Keep them out. we'll take these guys." And then when the regular players came back after the 3 games, the replacement players were kind of, some of them stayed, just very few. But when the regular players came back, the first half, they were horrible in the very first half, and the fans were booing them, yelling they wanted the replacement players back. So it's just kind of funny how fans interpret sports.
And I believe Wayne Wilson was one of those replacement
He was.
players. It was his last year playing. He was at the tail end of his career, and he was nowhere near as effective as he had been with the New Orleans Saints, but he played for them. And actually, the veterans all encouraged those guys. This is one of the differences between that team and all the others, and I think it's a large part of why they won the Super Bowl, is the veterans who were on strike were unified behind the replacements.
Well, and Joe Gibbs told them all, you go out together, you come back together, don't break ranks.
Right.
And that
That's
kept
right.
them together as a team.
That's right.
As well. And you had Tex Schramm over in Dallas, who very much played one player against another. Half their team. Do you remember how that all kind of went down? The last replacement game was a Monday Night Football game between Dallas and Washington, and Dallas had half their starters back. And everyone predicted a rout because Washington's team was all replacement players, guys that had been working in bookstores and UPS and whatever. And Washington actually won that game.
It mattered.
Even though Dallas had half their starters back.
It was their Super Bowl.
It was. And that turned out being well, those 3 wins launched them.
And
to
that
the
was
Super
a
Bowl.
great movie, too.
It was.
Yeah,
It was.
Keanu Reeves did a nice job. Johnny Utah.
John, this is not the reason why we invited you in here
let me-
today, but it
one
was
more
fun.
thing. I did mention Wayne Wilson for those who are newer around here. Wayne Wilson was an outstanding running back at Shepherd, and was just about the last guy drafted by the Houston Oilers, and was cut by them, but ended up playing several years as the leading ball carrier for the New Orleans Saints, and the most successful football player ever to come out of Shepherd.
Oh, he had an NFL career for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
Well, let's hope in 5 years or so we're not saying that.
I hope that's true.
Yeah. Who's on Hard Knocks this year? Anybody know? By the way?
Oh, the Bears were great on Hard Knocks last year.
You got to see a lot of Tyson
That
Bagent.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I don't know. Maybe Dylan can look that up or whatever, whoever's doing Hard, if they've decided that just yet. But I don't usually watch Hard Knocks, but that was pretty cool. I made a point of watching it because Tyson Bagent was part of the Bears, obviously. And, of course, now they fired their head coach after Thanksgiving.
I'm a Bears fan. I saw a thing yesterday. FanDuel said they are the most heavily bet on team right now to win the Super Bowl at 3,600 to 1.
What year to win the Super Bowl?
3,600 to 1
This year.
It can't be this year. Oh, those are good odds. You can make some money if you put $1 down. Yeah. John, what did you do in Charleston the last 60 days?
I was lobbying for environmental causes and health care and women's rights. And obviously, I was not very successful. So,
did anything pass that you worked on? Or change?
Well, a lot of things changed that I worked on. Mostly, I had some successes, but mostly they were defeating things that I was opposing. Very few things.
Let's start with something that you were able to help defeat. The
above-ground storage tank bill. This isn't a big deal for folks up here, but I'm sure they've read about it. In 2014, but it is personal for me. In 2014, I had been on the job for a week as Deputy Secretary of Revenue, and there was a chemical spill in Charleston that polluted the Elk River and ended up eliminating drinking water for over 300,000 people. As a result of that chemical spill, the legislature that year passed what's called the above-ground storage tank bill. And it slapped some really tight regulations on above-ground storage tanks that hold all kinds of things. These particular tanks held some pretty nasty chemicals. And anyway, they set up a set of rules. The next year, the legislature backed off on some of them. And I didn't mind that so much because I did think that in their zeal to stop the chemicals, the legislature probably overreached a little bit. And so I think the next year they ended up with a rule that was probably the best you could get. 2 or 3 years later, they backed off some more, which I didn't like. And now, the last couple of years, there's been a movement by the natural gas industry to essentially eliminate everything that was put in that original bill. And we were able to get it defeated this year. It passed the Senate. It passed the House Energy Committee right after the crossover day, the 50th day. But then it ended up on the inactive calendar in the House for the entire last week and never emerged. So I think we were successful in persuading enough members of the House that we'd already backtracked enough, that what we had were the bare bones of a bill. And if anybody wants to get into the specifics, I can do that. But I really think that covers the issue.
That look like something that might come up again next year?
I'm sure it will, because the natural gas industry is always looking for ways to avoid regulation. And I'm not saying that some regulations that have been applied are necessarily, the perfect regulations. There are times that we regulate and we overregulate. Mm-hmm. The trick is to figure out what is the necessary regulation, apply it, and keep it. And I think we have now something less than the necessary regulation. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's one.
Okay.
Darn you, John! How dare you want clean water for West Virginians?
The nerve of some people.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, clean drinking water. Yeah, that was one, and there were two bills, and now West Virginia Free, which is one of the organizations that was my client. West Virginia Free advocates on all kinds of women's health care issues, including abortion.
I know you can't talk without pounding that table.
I know I can't. Well, supposedly when they tell lawyers, if the facts are on your side, pound the facts. If the law is on your side, pound the law. If neither one's on your side, pound the table. So I've probably learned, I've been enough times when neither's been on my side, and all I can do is pound the table. So at any rate, there were two abortion bills that we thought were going to pass. One which would do away with the exceptions that are in the law now, which I personally think are pretty weak, but there are some exceptions for rape and incest. And another is a bill that actually looked like it might pass last year, which was for early childhood education, which I think amounted to indoctrination. It's called the Baby Olivia bill. Mm-hmm. And neither one of them passed. And
Are you surprised Baby Olivia bill didn't pass?
I am surprised.
Because that's 2 terms in a row now that hasn't passed.
That's right. It didn't even come up in either house this time. Yeah. I mean, it was introduced in both houses, but neither house, the committee took it up, and I was convinced that it was going to pass. So those were.
John? Can you tell us what the Baby Olivia bill does, please?
Yes, it says that at the moment of conception there is a light in the womb. That's what the movie says. It's a 5-minute movie that is to be shown to middle school age children. Now, I don't know where the evidence came from that this occurred. I don't think it exists. But I just think, even if you are a very strongly pro-life person, and I'm pro-choice, but I respect people with the pro-life view, and I never attack it. I disagree with it, but I don't attack it. I just think this goes way too far. I mean, because you're treating something as fact which has not been proven.
I mean, I've heard of the light at the end of the tunnel, but I'd never heard this light in the womb theory.
Yeah.
So what else did you help or work on to defeat, John, that you were successful doing?
Those were the two biggest successes that I had, yeah. There were some failures, and particularly the data center bill, what's called the microgrid bill.
This has been controversial among local county commissioners.
Well, it should be, because the legislature did two things that I think are abominations, political abominations. One is they took the real estate property tax, which has always been treated as a source of funding for local governments and public schools. And now they're going to take over half of it and give it to the state for things the state wants to do. The biggest pile of money goes to put into a fund so we can reduce the income tax rate more. There are smaller pots of money that the state can spend on, and only I think it's 20% of the money, maybe as much as 30%. It had many different iterations, and I'm trying to remember what the last one was. But somewhere around there, around 25, 30% of the money goes to the county that hosts this
It is 30.
microgrid.
Yeah,
Is it 30?
30%,
Okay. And then there's another pot, either 5 or 10, that is spread between all counties.
Yes.
I think it would have been all right if they had only let the county that has the data center have the 30%, and then take the other money and spread it around to other counties. The argument that the county with the data center shouldn't get all the money was, there'll be so much money in there they won't be able to spend it all. I mean, like we don't have enough sheriff's deputies now. Or they think we have too many sheriff's deputies.
I'll tell you what, John, we're going to pick up on this after the break. We'll take our break right now. More with John Doyle. The Hall of Famer, Matt Miller. Welcome back, Matty.
Good to be back.
Tallest coast we've ever had. Johnny the Bod, John Bodwell.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
You had a hiatus. About 3 weeks you were gone, huh?
I was all over the place, man. I was in Vegas. I was in Dallas. Meetings everywhere. And I won't be here next week either because I'm in Danville, Virginia, at a conference.
You look slimmer too. You had as your Lenten goal to lose weight, and you stopped all sweets.
I am down from March 1st. I am down 16 pounds.
Beautiful.
Nice.
I got another 5 or 6 to go.
Well done, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was I've been walking a ton and just not eating as much. It's crazy when you just don't eat as much as you were. The weight. And I have
walk more, eat less. That's what they say.
Doing Medicare and health insurance. I have a lot of people who people will call and say they won't cover my Ozempic. And I say, well, do you have diabetes or anything? Well, no, but I want the Ozempic. What you need to do is just stop eating so much and take a walk. Just go and walk. It's not the insurance company's job to pay for a $200 or $300 a month medication.
If he's going to say it, he's got to live it.
You don't want to slow down on the eating and take a walk. It ain't rocket science.
Move more, eat less. That's what they say.
I'm now off my soapbox for the time being.
For the time, we still got an hour and a half to go, though. So.
Yeah.
Mr. John Doyle, our guest here on the program. We were getting into this data center bill, the power grid bill that you were talking about heading into the break, John, and we mentioned it wasn't very popular with the local county commissioners, and you say for good reason.
Yeah, that's right. And we were on the financial part of it, which is only one of the problems with the bill. It takes money that traditionally has gone to local governments and schools and gives it to the state to primarily figure out a way to reduce the income tax. So it's a tax shift at the state level from the income tax to the property tax.
Do you think it will stand a court challenge?
I suspect it will, because I thought at the beginning that the property tax went to local governments by the Constitution. It doesn't. It's in statute. So it probably would. That part, I think, would withstand a constitutional challenge. But here's the problem. I think it's stupid politics. If you asked the public, individuals, which would you rather see have low, the income tax or your real estate property tax? Vast majority would say keep the property tax low. Don't lower my income tax, but raise my property tax. I mean, polls have shown that for darn near a century. And
especially as you get older.
That's right. And I just think it is stupid politics to say, let's do away with the income tax. But we're going to get more money from the property tax. So.
Well, and it's just, I mean, it adversely affects the income tax. The more you make, the more you pay. So the people who are making more money are paying more, and they're not happy about it. But the real estate tax, everybody pays it. Everybody who owns something pays it. Even if you don't own something, if you rent, I mean,
you are really paying it.
Everybody's paying. I mean, you pay double. If you have a rental property, you pay double the property taxes in West Virginia. So where does that go? It just gets passed on to the renters.
So back to my I hadn't even gotten to my central point yet, which is this. I do think that the property tax should stay with local government and schools. Now, there's a number of ways they could have done it. They could have taken that money they gave to the state and given it to all the counties and the municipalities, and because that's an add-on to the property tax. That's one. Another way they could have done it is taken the money that was not going to go to the county where the data center would be built, take that extra money and put it as a boost, a surplus to the school aid formula. And that way we could give our teachers and bus drivers and cooks a real good raise around the state and bring our salaries up. We're now 50th in teacher salaries. And that money would, even though it would be distributed by the state, would stay with the schools, which is a traditional use of the property tax. They could have done either of those, but they didn't.
John, when I talk to officials and they discuss the salary of folks, including public employees, they say that lowering the state income tax is effectively giving everybody a raise, not just state workers.
Well, it is technically, but if you're going to shift the burden someplace else, and every state gets its money from somewhere. Different states get more from the sales tax or less from the sales tax, more from the income tax, less from the income tax. In many states, most states, much more government is done at the local level than in West Virginia, and that's why their property taxes are higher. Because in many states, health care is done by counties, not by the state, and it comes from the property tax. So you're going to pay one way or the other. That's the bottom line.
We need West Virginia Disney, John.
Yeah. Now, let me go to another major problem with that microgrid bill, the data center bill. And that is that it gives a blanket exemption from all local rules, local zoning, local, planning rules, everything. And I just think that is fundamentally wrong. And the freaky thing is, we don't have a whole lot of that in West Virginia anyway. Of the 55 counties in West Virginia, there are only 5 that have countywide zoning, and 4 others have partial zoning. Berkeley's one of those. Berkeley is zoned Tuscarora District for 50 years now, I think, but has not zoned any place else.
All except around Bill Stubblefield's house. That's
I don't know about that, and I still don't know. I'll take your word for it, though. At any rate, and the only place you have a whole lot of zoning is in municipalities. They exempted even municipal zoning, even though the guy from who was advocating for data centers said, we're not going to put any of these in cities. So why did they need to bother to do that?
just in case.
Or maybe pure ideology. It could have been either.
Well, and there might be some cities in southern West Virginia, places like Welch and stuff like that, where so much stuff has gone out, where there actually is some open room and cheap land where it could go into a city. So, I mean, I don't think it's completely ideological. I mean, there are areas of West Virginia within municipalities that they could put a data center.
I didn't say it was necessarily ideological. I said that is possibly one of the reasons, and another reason is they just get, there are any of a number of reasons why they might have done it. I think it was a mistake to do that.
John, when I talked to Jason Barrett about this, the Vice Chair of Finance in the Senate, he said that what Governor Morrissey wanted was he wanted to make West Virginia the #1 destination for data centers. And to do that, one of the ways to do it is that you don't have companies that are dealing with 55 different and unique sets of rules and regulations. There would just be one. And once you found the land, you could plop that data center in any part of the state, and the rules would be the same, 55 across.
I understand the theory. It doesn't work. The states that have been the most effective at improving their economies are those states that have more local control. And that is, this gets into, it's related to the issue, but it's a philosophical one. Before I was first elected to the legislature, for 10 years, I sold college textbooks for a living.
I remember.
I was 8 years with John Wiley & Sons and 2 years with Houghton Mifflin. When I was with Wiley, we marketed to political science departments a state and local government textbook. I can't remember the author, but I might still have a copy of the book at home. I got all these books up on shelves. At any rate, and he used West Virginia as the example of the top-down approach. He called it the Soviet-style government. Now, this was 40...
That's a negative, just to be clear. That was a negative. It still is. That's a negative.
That's right. That's right. That was then. And when I got elected, I focused on trying to get more local control in West Virginia, particularly because we had just begun to grow over here, and we needed to make local decisions. And I got a little bit of it done, but not much. Since the Republicans became the majority party in the legislature, and oh, by the way, all the time the Democrats were in control, it was the Republicans who were saying, elect us, and we'll have more local control. In the 10 years that they've been in charge, they have taken the attitude, if we don't like something one city is doing, we're going to ban every city from doing it. And the same way with county level. I mean, it's just like, what in the world has happened to the supposed party of local control?
They got control.
They got control. That's exactly right.
Anybody who gets control at the State House doesn't want to give up that control to
And
the
here's
local
the thing.
areas.
Sure.
If you ask big businesses around the country, when you go someplace, do you want zoning or do you not? They want it because of the predictability of what will happen after they get there. That's the weakness of this theory of doing away with local control.
Mr. Miller.
Well, and I just wrote down local control, 2 question marks on my notes, because that, again, those were issues that came up that, in our county, Berkeley County in particular, Jefferson a part of that, wanting, desiring more local control, and it never seems to happen.
It doesn't. That's right.
So
for the 2 reasons we've talked about, I think this was a terrible bill.
John, what were your observations of this legislature? For probably 75% of it, it was knocked as very little happening, a kind of a do-nothing legislature for the vast majority of the 60-day session. I know that's not necessarily completely uncommon with other ones, but this one seemed to be getting worse rep than others. There was a flurry at the end, as usual, but your thoughts overall?
Well,
and also your thoughts on Governor Morrissey with his first shot at the big chair, trying to interact with the House and the Senate.
I'll get to that one first. Patrick didn't get along with a whole lot of legislators. Now, you can blame him or you can blame the legislators. I don't know. I do think that he saw his role as, I'm the CEO and I'm just going to tell you, the board of directors, what to do. That happened, I remember, a number of years ago when Joe Manchin was governor in his first year. He talked to a joint caucus of House and Senate Democrats, and this is back when we had about a 2-to-1 majority, and he used that phrase, and immediately about a dozen people jumped up, raised their hands, and the first one was called on and said, "Excuse me, Governor, you are not the CEO. This is not a corporation where you were elected to run the corporation. You are a separate branch of government from us. We make the laws. You propose them to us. We decide what they are. And then when we decide what they are, you execute them whether you like it or not." And from that point on, Joe Manchin understood that the relationship between the governor and the legislature is not a relationship between a CEO and a board of directors. A board of directors it's just a whole different ballgame.
Do you think Patrick Morrissey went through the same thing early on?
I think he didn't seem to understand that in this session. Maybe he'll learn. I don't know. I like Patrick. I've known him for a long time.
Sure.
Back when I was in the legislature, he used to show up at my town hall meetings and disagree with everything I said. No, and I enjoyed it. I think he has a good heart. I think he has. He wants to do right. And one major difference between Patrick and Jim Justice is that Patrick is a policy person. I disagree with much of his the policies he supports, but he is a policy person. Jim Justice wouldn't know a policy if he tripped over it. I mean, really, his policy is, it's just goodness, and baby dog,
Well,
That's Jim Justice for policy.
He's won 3 elections in a row with
got
that.
got him to the Senate. It's not a bad policy.
Pretty convincing victories, too, but I get your point on that.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, in terms of the legislature, it was a terrible session in the sense that historically, when a new governor is elected, the most productive session of the 4 in the 4-year term is the first one. This, compared to other first-year sessions of a newly elected governor, this is far and away the worst.
Well,
I mean, I give you an, they spent a lot of time debating a bill to ban ranked choice voting in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. Now, whatever you think about ranked choice voting, that's not the point. It's never going to happen in West Virginia. So they spent all this time banning something that isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think maybe some of it had to do with the fact that people were saying, you know what? If we had ranked choice voting in 2024, Patrick Morrissey wouldn't be governor because he would have lost the Republican primary.
I want to read a quote in a Metro News article today. It has to do with Patrick Morrissey signing some bills and going through the review process of what bills he's not going to line item or to veto and whatever. For the future, this is Morrissey addressing, I presume, the legislature. For the future, folks should know that if your bill costs taxpayers money and you haven't provided an offset for your proposed program, the odds of your initiative getting approved will be slim. We work for the taxpayers and should never forget that fact, 2 exclamation points. Taxpayers must be respected. Morrissey has already signed 161 bills into law. He said 48 other bills have been approved, and he will sign them in the coming days. Your thoughts on the statement from Governor Morrissey to the legislature in regards to the bills?
I agree with that in theory, and the problem is that I'll bet you if a bill came up that Governor Morrissey really wanted, that spent money and didn't find the source, he'd probably sign it. If he really, really, really wanted it. That's the weakness of taking a hard and fast, down the line, here it is and there will be no exceptions. There are always exceptions.
The statement itself, is he accounting for growth in the state's economy when he makes that comment? Because, in theory, any raise you gave to a state employee, and that includes teachers, custodians, whatever, is an expense. So is he saying that you have to cut costs otherwise to approve the raises, or is he saying that economic growth can account for that raise?
I don't know what he's saying there. He needs to flesh it out. But I personally believe, and I tried like the Dickens to abide by this when I was in the legislature. If somebody came up with an idea that I thought was a good idea, but it was spending money, I would tell them, listen, I will support it only if you find a funding source that I think is reasonable. Now, being a liberal, I didn't mind voting to raise taxes if I thought the program was worthwhile and would end up in the long run saving money, even with the increase in taxes, that it would improve the economy enough that we can maybe then sometime in the future reduce some taxes. Or a better idea would be find something we're doing now which you can demonstrate is less important than the idea you've come up with. Okay, fine, I'll shift money. I would do that. But I would not, I would tell the leadership, listen, I'm not voting for something that spends money unless we know we've got the money somewhere. And so I do think that is important. It sounds like the part of the problem with the flat budget, and that's what Jim Justice tried to do, is there is inflation. There's always going to be some inflation. Even when we have acceptable inflation, it's like 2%. The Fed says 2% is acceptable inflation. Over a period of 10 years, if you say we're going to have a flat budget, that's really cutting expenses. And if you're going to do that flat budget by simply not giving anybody raises, you're cutting their pay. And I think we all need to understand that.
But when they proposed the flatline budget, and Craig Blair was on this show talking about that a lot as Senate president and the finance chair before that, what they really were doing was just putting it off till they backfilled at the end, were they not?
In some cases, yes. But if you say our budget this year should be no greater than the budget we had 10 years ago, the only way to accomplish that and be fair to employees is to have figured out a way to reduce or eliminate programs.
Yeah.
They haven't done that.
Morrissey talked about streamlining government, cutting the fat, reducing waste, fraud, abuse, all that stuff you hear about all the time. Was any of that accomplished during the legislative session?
I do not think so. I do remember when I was in, and this is back when the budget was $3 billion. The general fund budget was $3 billion and not $5 billion like it is now. Mm-hmm. And I was on the finance committee for the first time. And we cut $60 million out of that and sent that budget to the floor. And all the Republicans in the House voted it down. And that, added with some Democrats, meant our budget lost on the floor. So we had to go back into the finance committee and ended up submitting a budget that only cut about $10 million. And we got that through. It is like pulling teeth to get legislators to eliminate programs. And the reason is every program we have has very strong, hardcore supporters saying this is why this program is necessary. And if you think it isn't, you have to stand up to them. And I've voted to eliminate a couple of programs. Like I say, I caught all kinds of hell from some people from that vote. I'll take it. It's you know.
John, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
The Republicans have a supermajority right now.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, the Democrats had a very large majority.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about how it's more difficult to govern when you have a big majority.
You end up doing stupid things because because the opposition just isn't loud enough to say, hey, wait a minute.
Wait, Rob and I have just as much power in the state legislature as the Democrats do.
That's
at this
true.
point.
You do. When I was first elected in 1982, we had 87 Democrats and 13 Republicans in the House. And it would have been 88-12, but an election in the Northern Panhandle, an incumbent member of the House of Delegates named David McKinley, who was later a U.S. congressman, had survived a recount by one vote.
Oh, my.
Oh, yeah. And the Democrats just ran everything. We let the Republicans make their speeches, and then we would vote them down. And it doesn't work. I talked to a guy, or even earlier than that, back in the 60s, before I was had ever even run, a guy named Bob Harmon from Mineral County, who was the minority whip. And this is when the Republicans were down 91-9. And he said, look, in order to be an effective minority, we've got to have about a third. If you get to about a third, the minority can be effective. It can affect, in some cases, whether something passes, or in many more cases, the nature of something that passes. What amendments get adopted and don't get adopted. So that is what we need, is a minority that is at least a third of each house.
If every Democrat that changed to Republican went back to being a Democrat, where would that get you numbers-wise?
It would get close to it.
Close to it. They may not get elected, but that would effectively, it does show who the party members are.
Oh, I think they might get elected. I remember when it was 87-13 and I had been elected by a bare margin. Then I lost in 84 to John Overington. That time, they went from 13 to something like 36. It was that big a changeover. And that now that minority of 36 was very effective. And this is when Archmore got elected to his third term in 84. And they, along with the Archmore Democrats, were able to get a number of things through that Governor Moore wanted.
Now, we're down to our final minute here. You got to go, or you want to hang out with us for another hour?
Oh, I can hang out.
Yeah, we got a few guests on the program, too. And you can just be like your old job.
Okay.
How long did you co-host here?
17 years.
17 years. Was it all with Tom?
No, Patty Alter was on some of the time. A couple of other people in the interim. Yeah.
They had radio all the way back then?
Oh, yeah. Marconi played the mamba, remember?
Nice.
It's in the song.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, we are back with more. Mr. John Doyle is going to hang out with us